Welcome back to our podcast looking at all things development. Today we're going to be touching on a social and behavior change project, looking at its communication plan, the objectives of that plan, some of the theories and theoretical frameworks used, and the impact that this project would have hoped to have. It's all about Jamaica and our vision to gain first world status. So Jamaicans one and all, come and join us. Come join in. Vision 2030 Jamaica plan. Now watch the reading. But that's just a snippet from this Vision 2030 song. This was a call elicited by the Planning Institute of Jamaica under the charge of the Government of Jamaica to all Jamaicans from as early as 2009. This charge came from the National Development Plan, Vision 2030 Jamaica. So I know you're there scratching your head and say, but you said we're looking at a project, so how are we talking about the Vision 2030 plan? Well, the Vision 2030 Development Plan can also be considered a social change project, aiming to change the socio-economic standings of the people of Jamaica and their approach and mindset to nationalism. The plan was designed with the expectation that it would inspire hope, build nationalism, and provide a strategic roadmap to development within 21 years. The touted result being Jamaica, the place to live, work, raise families, and do business. The PIOJ, under instruction from then Minister of Finance and Planning Dr. Omar Davis, set out to develop a national development plan that was realistic, achievable, and relevant to the country's reality, while aligning it to the commitments made in the Millennium Development Goals and other international agreements. Aimed at having Jamaica achieving their fullest potential, this plan is planked on 4 pillars, namely 1. Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential. 2. The Jamaican society is secure, cohesive, and just. 3. Jamaica's economy is prosperous. 4. Jamaica has a healthy natural environment. These goals are clearly outlined and are linked to 15 national outcomes. The goals are aligned to specific sectors and development partners, and it is clear in communicating it that the achievements of the plan is a process that can only be successful if there is participation at all levels. So from me and you, the Prime Minister and the Governor General, from everyone. According to the National Development Plan, here are some of the items that were outlined in their communication plan. So the first thing that they did, they had an official public launch of the process by the then Prime Minister Honorable Bruce Golding under the theme, Planning for a Secure and Prosperous Future. This launch was broadcasted live on national television and radio, streamed live via the internet, as well as the PIOJ's website was updated to assist with the dissemination of information aimed at educating and creating awareness of the pertinent issues among all stakeholders, including the Jamaica diaspora. The second thing they did in the plan was to utilize the production of print and electronic media materials such as flyers, brochures, radio commercials, video stories, television advertisement to present the national vision statement and request for public feedback. A specially commissioned Vision 2030 Jamaica theme song was also done, which we looked at earlier, and a jingle was composed and arranged in the popular genre. In addition to all of these things, PowerPoint presentations were also done. Another component of their communication plan was the use of face-to-face interactions. Through presentation consultations, we both provided the stimulus for stakeholders to share their dreams and aspirations for themselves and the society, as well as their views and opinions on how these may be realized. These presentations and consultations were held in two phases. The first one looked at a special interest group, and the second one looked at the public. This process included over 84 presentations and consultations for special interest groups, consultations with over 25 schools with 1,200 participants at the 5th form and 6th form level. Another component of their plan was that between January and September 2008, 10 public consultations covered the parishes of St. James and Trelawney, Manchester and St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland and Hanover, Clarendon, St. Catherine, Portland, Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Anne and St. Thomas. In preparation for these consultations, the sector plans were placed in each parish library, and the PIOJ's website was upgraded, as we mentioned earlier, to support the dissemination of information on the planning process and the integrated plan. Another component of their communication plan was that ongoing island-wide public education and interaction with stakeholders continued throughout the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation aspects of Vision 2030. So yeah, we're talking about all these things, but let us have an understanding of how development correlates to everything that they're trying to achieve in the communication plan. Development refers to a process in which societies and individuals moves from traditional ways to modern ways of living. That's Lerner 1950. It is important to address the issues of communication when speaking about development, because it is one of the pillars that can either facilitate or hinder the development process. Development is it's a participatory process, and regardless of the challenge, without effective communication strategies, the plan will fail and the process will fail. Development communication is a tool that is used to make development more participatory. In particular, development communication is a socio-cultural process of dialogue and information sharing, building mutual understanding, agreeing to collective action, and amplifying the voice of the people to influence policies that affect them. Let us talk a little bit about some of the theories and the theoretical framework that we find evident in the Vision 2030 Development Plan, which in this case we mentioned earlier is operating as a social and behavioral project aimed at changing the socio-economic status of the Jamaican people and improving national pride. Development communication, as we mentioned earlier, is participatory. As we assess the intervention above, which is Vision 2030, we can see that the strategy was entirely top-down, employing a hypodermic needle type of approach, and seems to employ a theoretical framework similar to the diffusion of innovation theory. It is an approach used to disseminate the information about development projects, their merits, and persuade communities or individuals to accept them. This approach is illustrated by the use of flyers, brochures, radio commercials, which suggests that information transmitted through communication media was a potent solution to development and change problems. It lacks, however, adequate participation of communities or individuals, and seemingly does not take into account such issues as media content and messages and access to communication facilities, the socio-cultural, political, economic, and structural context of the realities in which we're operating. Although the approaches used in the communication plan and the application of the hypodermic needle theory and the theoretical framework of the diffusion of innovation theory, there were some shortcomings. Although the approaches were quite innovative with the use of town hall meetings and as well as developing Vision 2030, it seems bereft of the knowledge of access to communication facilities, the socio-cultural, political, and economic and structural realities of some communities in Jamaica. So how can we fix this plan for it to achieve what it intended to achieve? One, we can increase engagement of community development agencies such as the SDC, which is very prominent in Jamaica, as the government mandated community development agency with the responsibility for communities. The SCC will be able to engage all umbrella organizations which represents hundreds of communities. The second thing we can do is to develop an island-wide poster competition with various age group categories that requires entrants to share their interpretation of Vision 2030. 3. We can look at increased use of ICTs, especially social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat to show successes to date. We can also allow for feedback from all citizens. We can make Vision 2030 discussions mandatory at ministry, department, and agencies. And we can also develop a school program through the arts, whether it's dance or drama and uniform groups, scouts and brownies, that inculcates the Vision 2030 message. Overall, the communication plan employed by Vision 2030 was strong and had a good reach and attempted to incorporate all walks of life. These strategies, with the recommendations that we have just tabled, will allow for dialogue and information sharing, building mutual understanding, and overall improve participation, thus taking us further to achieve our development goals and achieve the behavior change of improving Jamaicans' socio-economic status and to instill national pride. Well, that's all the time that we have for today, but thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to another podcast come next week. Walk good.